Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about TypeScript. From this point forward, we are going to try and migrate all of our existing React applications to TypeScript in order to understand the advantages that TypeScript brings and also understand why TypeScript is slowly becoming even more popular than JavaScript when it comes to actually coding out your applications. So TypeScript is actually a language that extends from JavaScript that is maintained by Microsoft. The thing about TypeScript is that it emulates a typically statically typed language, which JavaScript is not. We'll discuss statically typed languages versus non, like JavaScript, in a little bit. The main thing I want you to understand about TypeScript is that when it comes to writing TypeScript, if you can write TypeScript, you can definitely write JavaScript. But if you can write JavaScript, it does not mean you can write TypeScript. So I want you to see TypeScript as almost an enhanced version of JavaScript. It still has all the core logic of JavaScript, but there is now this extra layer on top when it comes to type safety. Now, we talk a lot about types, but what are types to begin with? So to begin, we have discussed certain types before, such as primitive types in JavaScript. So if you think about primitive types, you know there are integers, which is essentially any number value. You know there are strings. You know there are objects. There are functions, which are essentially extensions of objects. They're a special type of object. We also have arrays. We also have booleans, like true, false. And we also have null, which is its own type. Undefined, which is its own type, as well as symbols, but you don't really need to use symbols. The main thing that you want to know about these different types is that every single thing that you cast in JavaScript to some variable or anything that holds value is some kind of type. When you think about it, typically we are constantly passing types around. Different types also have different methods on it. If you think about strings, if we have some string value called myString, using this string that holds my name, I can perform a bunch of different transformations on it, such as to local uppercase. This will uppercase all the string. The thing though is that you cannot call this to local uppercase on some array. So let's say I had my array value like this. If I tried to call my array.to local uppercase, here you're going to see my local uppercase is not a function. So this, though, as you can see, is a type error. When you think about a type error, it implies that you are trying to call something on a type that does not have that method or function. It's essentially saying you have the wrong type here, which is exactly the case. To local uppercase is a string method. Here we're trying to call a string method on an array. It's the wrong type to use that method. So in JavaScript, when you really think about all of these methods that we call constantly, .map on arrays, .filter, .reduce, these are all array methods. When you think about object, calling object.assign, these are also all specific methods to specific types. So when it comes to using these types, when you think about writing some of your code, let's say you had some function called myFunction. And what it did is it takes some message. And then with this message, what we return is message.to lowercase. If we passed into myfunc a string value like this, we get it back as lowercase. However, when we use myfunc, when you think about it, if you're exporting this out of your file and you're trying to call this somewhere else, it's very easy to forget that myfunc takes a message. In fact, it's also easy to forget when looking at the method what exactly this thing it's expecting to receive is going to be. We happen to know that to lowercase is only a string method, but what if it was calling some other method that we were unaware of? In general, it's very challenging for us to be fully aware when looking at all of our functions and all of our code, what the types of the things that they hold are. TypeScript actually aims to resolve that. Essentially, with TypeScript, every single variable, every single thing you pass, every function, everything you write statically says, these are the only types I'm willing to accept. These are the only types I'm going to give you back. Everything is typed, meaning all of the types are defined. We lose out on the flexibility of JavaScript because, of course, with JavaScript, with my func, nothing stops me from passing in an object. But again, we're going to get a type error because once I pass an object, it's going to try and call a method that doesn't exist. But JavaScript does not stop you from calling my func with a type that it's not expecting. Now, this is where it comes to being static typed versus not statically typed. JavaScript is not statically typed. What that means is that at what point is it actually going to check that this type is not what it's expecting it to be in order to call to lowercase on it? Well, it actually does it at runtime. When it actually tries to execute my func when it got called here with message being an object, and then when to lowercase attempted to be run, that's when it realized, oh, this method doesn't exist. This is the wrong type. With a statically typed language, you can't even pass this an object. When you define your code and you write your code out, if you were to even try and write this code without running it, TypeScript will throw you a type error and it will say, hey, you have to give me a string. I'm expecting a string. You're giving me an object. This is not going to work. This is at a very low level the main advantage of TypeScript. But in order for this to extend itself and for us to see a lot of the advantages that it brings, we need to start working with it first in order to really explore all of the benefits. So that's what we're going to do. In this lesson, we are going to integrate with TypeScript. We're going to convert over first our Monsters-Rolodex project into TypeScript so that we can learn about some of the benefits that TypeScript brings. There is a lot of complexity that comes with TypeScript, but once you get familiar with it, it's just really a matter of practice. And another important thing to know is that with a lot of TypeScript, while there are definitely some best practices, a lot of it is considered an art, not necessarily a science. There's a balance here that we're trying to strike in being typed enough that we get the security that comes from TypeScript, but not so much that we are so hindered from writing code quickly and efficiently. This is really the dance of writing TypeScript and why for a long time there was a slower adoption. But the benefits that it brings in the long run and that statically typed confidence you have in your code is actually a net benefit to speed and quality of code and even the actual efficiency of how much code you can pump out in the long run. There's a lot of advantages to writing TypeScript. It's just we have to get through that beginning valley that makes it challenging. So there's a lot in these lessons about TypeScript. So once you're ready, let's dive right into it in the next video.